In 1989, I was doing a show called Jerome Robbins Broadway, and I won a Tony Award from it. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it was the beginning of what I call the trifecta. So it was the Tony Award, Pretty Woman, Seinfeld.
Right.
All happened within about a 16-month period.
Jeez. Man, oh man.
And the world took a left turn, and I went, oh,
Yeah.
I guess I'm doing this now.
And at each one of those, did you think, well, it's not going to get better than this?
Yeah.
Pretty Woman, well,
Also,
this
I
is
never
gonna be-
had expectations of it. I had, when I tell this story sometimes in the one-man show, when we were shooting Pretty Woman, it was a little bit of a debacle because the script was a kind of serious affair.
Yeah.
But Gary Marshall was putting us through improvisational jumps, and you know, we all had a great time. We had a great time.
Yeah.
You cannot not have fun on a Gary Marshall film.
Oh, God, that must have been a dream.
And Julia was wonderful, and Richard was wonderful, and, you know, Larry Miller was there. You know, it's just a lot of fun people.
Yeah.
But we went to the wrap party going, I don't think they have a movie, because we couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Wow.
So I had no expectations on Pretty Woman.
Jeez.
And when we did the Seinfeld pilot, which again I thought was wonderful, but I remember being at the wrap party with Jerry, and he went, what do you think? And I went, no way. He said, you don't think it's good? I said, no, I do think it's good. That's your problem. This show is for me. It's for guys 21 to 35 years old. They don't watch television. I don't watch television.
Right.
Alf is the number one show on TV. No one's going to switch up. No one's going to get this. There's no audience for this. And I was kind of right. That was the demo that really sparked to it when we had very small ratings. And because it was that demo, there were advertisers always willing to get behind it because they couldn't get to that demo except on sports shows.
Right.
So, then somehow, as Jerry and Larry and the gang, really got their feet under themselves, the show started to stretch out its appeal to much older people, much younger people, other countries, all ethnicities, things that I went, no one's going to get this.
Yeah.
They suddenly started to get it.
Right. How did Jerry has that blown up letter from the focus group.
Yeah.
When I was working with him in his office, it was over the toilet. But it's just
probably
like
where they
big,
should all
giant
belong.
letter of why this show is horrible and will never work.
Yeah.
Oh, what a perfect thing to have in your. At what point do you realize, oh, this is we're a hit. This is going to be, or at least we're going to.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not sweating the next pickup.
Yeah, I think it was all somewhere in the third season. A couple things happened. I think that's the season where we did the contest, and that was a phenomena. I was well aware if we pull this off, this is a phenomenon because it was so taboo. And done so well. And if you go back, the story I've always heard is that if you go back and you watch the Nielsen ratings as that was airing, the number by the end of the episode was triple the number at the beginning, and the number on the West Coast was triple the number on the East Coast, which means that as it was airing, people were on the phone going, turn on Channel 4, turn on Channel, you won't believe this. And that sort of made everyone so aware of us, and they kept coming back. So we knew that. But for me, and I've told the story before, I think it was in that third season, I hadn't been doing publicity for the show because I was watching it. But I was doing Entertainment Tonight, and we were walking on the street to get B-roll. So it's just, the woman that was interviewing me, and we're walking down the street. And as a van went by, there was a black family in the van. And a little girl that I put maybe 10 years old, maybe. I don't know. She went by kind of quickly. But she leaned out the window and yelled, "I love you, George." And I went, what the hell is she watching? How is this little girl watching our show? Nothing on our show should strike her as fun or funny or familiar. And that's when I went, oh, I'm not aware of, this is doing something I'm not fully aware of.
That's so cool.
And that was the beginning for me.
How searching was it for your character, or were you pretty locked in from the beginning?
No. Well, in a way. Again, for any of you that have heard me tell these stories before, forgive me. I have no way to augment them.
Tell them.
When Jerry and Larry started looking for actors in New York, feeling that they had done everything they could do in L.A., and they had found some people they liked, but they didn't make a deal. They couldn't make a deal. So they reached out to New York, and I was one of maybe 30 actors that got put on tape without the presence of Jerry or Larry.
Right.
So we got sent a couple of pages from the pilot script. No context, no nothing. And I'm reading this scene. I know Jerry is Jerry, and I knew who Jerry was. And I went, I think this is like a Woody Allen thing. So I just went, do Woody Allen. That's where the glasses came from. I didn't wear glasses at the time.
Right.
And forget the New York accent. I was doing as blatant Woody Allen as I possibly could, and thinking, well, nothing's going to come of this.
Yeah.
And about a week later, Larry called. Larry and Jerry maybe. And they said, we're going to fly you out, read for the network, read with Jerry. Love everything you're doing. Just maybe not quite so obviously Woody Allen inflection, but the New York thing is great. Okay, and I go out and I meet the guys and I read at NBC. And by the time I get back, I've got the thing. So I go into the series with Woody Allen in my head.
Right.
Thinking it's a, Woody Allen prototype.
Yeah.
Somewhere, not in the first season, because the first season was a whopping 4 episodes.
4 episodes.
But somewhere in that Confidence 13, there was an episode, and I can't remember what it was, but when we did the table read, I thought the George storyline was a little preposterous. I just thought this weird thing, never going to happen. And they've got me reacting to it in this strange way.
Yeah.
So after the table read, I went up to Larry, and I said, Larry, you help me with this. You're going for something, and I want to get it for you. Because we both know this would never happen in life. And if it did, nobody would react like this. So what are you thinking? And Larry said, I don't know what you're talking about. This happened to me, and it's exactly what I did. And in my head, I went, George is Larry. Larry is George. And in that moment...
Yeah.
Because I've always loved finding a real life role model of a character I'm doing and trying to take as much of the physical and the verbal and
like your dad back in the thing.
So I started really looking at Larry and trying to incorporate his tics and his rhythms and some of his, what I thought of as his personality quirks.
Right.
Into George and I think he knew.
Yeah.
We never talked about it,
No.
but I think he knew that I finally knew that he knew that I knew, and it made the whole journey much easier because anytime I didn't understand something on the page, I go, oh, but Larry, and had great fun looking at it through that lens all the time.
How was he? He's so cantankerous, and he tried to quit the show. He was panicked. You hear all the stories how he would try and he dread every time it got picked up. And what was that presence like on set? I mean, you're looking at him as like your muse in a way, but there's also. That's a lot of anxiety on a set.
To be completely honest, and to Larry's credit, that's all true, but most of that was contained to the writer's room in the production office. It was rare that he was on the set going it can't be done. Once or twice that did happen. Where his anxiety level would, or his. The thing I was privy to a couple times was, and then everybody learned, don't do this. But when the studio or the network would give him notes, and he'd go, all right, I quit, and Jerry would run out in the parking lot and go, you can't quit. And then honestly, people went, don't give him notes.
Right.
And that was sort of the magic of the show is people went, they're going to do what they're going to do. So just let them do it.
Just leave it.
But what I always loved about Larry and was very much part of how I approached George was I always loved Larry's awareness and sense of humor about the two things in his personality that don't go together. This amazing sense of worthlessness and personal devaluation sitting side by side with an ego that goes, I'm not getting my due. And that's kind of what George is. Larry would be, it was brilliant. My 10 minutes was brilliant. And they did. but everybody was better. I mean, it's this weird combo platter.
It's a great combination
of two ends of the spectrum, and when you point it out to him, or when he realizes it, he also finds it really crazy funny. Right. And I thought that's the charm of the man and the character.
Right.
Is that my wife used to say to me, because she came to the first 100 episode.
Wow.
Taping. And Dana and I studied with the same guy. She's not an actress, but she knows my process. And I'd do a take, and she'd go, and she'd call me over, and she'd go, yeah, but George has a sense of humor about it.
Uh-huh.
Which would remind me that, yes,
he knows.
In the moment, he's all, they're not giving me dancing money? Who's dancing, right? But she said it's also, there's a part of him that goes, you're being a real idiot right now. And when I could remember that, and to me, that's kind of Larry. People would always ask me about Larry, and I go, I find him, I love his heart. I really do. I think I think he works very hard to be a curmudgeon. Not that he doesn't feel those things, but he doesn't act out on them the way his curb version of Larry does.
What percentage of you is in there?
Of me? In George?
Yeah.
I think it's more perception. I mean, I do know what it is to be the butt of the joke and to be the little guy going, how much of this do you eat and how much of this do you rail against?
Yeah.
I tend to think George is more the product of my observational abilities rather than my sensibilities. I have found, and it's not always something I'm proud about, and I've actually tried to mitigate it over the years. I would push back verbally about things that I thought were false or trying to diminish me, but not the reactions that George has, the vitriol, the hysterics. I think I come from a don't make a scene, background, and at the
you can defend yourself, but not.
At the times when I've planted a flag and had a discussion / argument with people, sure, there are shades of George's, I'm not going to take this lying down in it. But my behaviors are not George's behaviors. And I think if they were, I wouldn't have been able to use them. I think they would have been, I wouldn't have known to use them. I think the parts of me that I have actually called on to use in creating other characters are not necessarily funny parts. I wouldn't know how to use them to be funny.
Right. I was thinking on the ride over here, and it's not a really formulated thought, but I think it is. It's such a cool thing that you've made so many people. This is about the people appreciating you and always saying thank you. You've had so many laughs for a long time. For the 9 years doing the show, you had people laughing every single week.
Yeah,
you were making people, millions of people, so much greater than today on a TV show. So many millions of people laugh every single week, and then you wrap that up, and then every day since then. Now they're watching it multiple times. You can't get away from Seinfeld. Right. It's everywhere. If you do all of the math of how many laughs you have generated in America, even beyond America, but just with the public, the number of times you made human beings laugh from when you were actively doing it to the repeats of it doing it, I think, and I'm not a mathematician, but you're one of the funniest people on the planet.
Oh, well, that's very kind. That's very kind.
How, I mean, I'm talking to Jason, not Jay.
Yeah.
But Jay has to listen a little bit.
Yeah.
What a great, great thing that you are one of the people that made all those people laugh. That's insane.
Here's how I will respond to it. And again, if you've seen me on other podcasts, you're getting trod ground. But my mom, when I was growing up, would always say, sweetie, what I wish for you, no matter where life takes you, is that you live a life of service to people, because it's probably the most rewarding life. And she certainly did it.
Yeah.
And when acting became my thing, I went, well, Mom, sorry to tell you, I'm living life in the most selfish possible profession.
Me.
Because I thought, honestly, why do I do this? I do it because I seem to be okay at it.
Yeah.
I like the people around me. They're paying me a lot to do it. People go, yay, when I finish it every time. And it seemed like a very selfish profession to me.
Yeah.
What I've learned is it is not, but specifically the Seinfeld show was what pointed it out to me, because I have had so many, and it continues to this day. At least once a week, I either hear from someone or meet someone who will say some version of, I was going through bad stuff, dark times. You and that show brought me back my joy, brought me back my laughter when I didn't think there would be any.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that compliment is one that both Jay and Jason can take in and go, I am so happy to have been part of something that did that for you. That's fantastic. And the fact that it continues, and that I travel all over the world. I have yet to find a place where some part of that population doesn't come up and go. I remember when I went into the Palestinian territories for the first time doing peace advocacy work in Israel. And, I'm an American Jew, keep your head down, is what I thought. And I stepped out of the car in Ramallah, and a little street vendor went, George! And, the next thing I know, they're all around, and they know the show. They were excited about the show.
One last question. I know I was going to let you go.
All right. Where am I going?
I worked with Jerry for years.
I've heard of him.
You worked with Jerry for years?
Yeah.
Is there any story you can give me that no one's ever heard before?
About Jerry?
Yeah, about Jerry. Working with Jerry. Wow. Maybe in the beginning, looking at him, what? I know he's a comic, but...
So, okay, here's the downside of being this old.
Okay.
I'm not sure if what I'm remembering happened or if it's a story that I've told and now I think it happened. But here's a story that I believe happened.
Okay.
And it was during the pilot, shooting the pilot. And there was a scene in the diner where he and I are, at odds about something. And we're rehearsing, and Jerry says to me very kindly, he goes, when Larry and I wrote this, we kind of heard it a certain way. Would it be awful of me to ask you to maybe try it this way? And I said, are you saying you want to give me a line reading? And he said, well, yeah. I said, sure. I said, here's the thing. As long as I understand it, I'm happy to do it. I said, I might even be happy to do it if I don't understand it, if it's really important to you. But if I understand it, absolutely, I have no problem with you giving me a line reading. If you can make me funnier, I'm in. Right? I said, but as long as we're having this conversation, are our characters having an argument? He said, yeah. I said, could I ask you to have an argument? Because it kind of feels like I'm punching into Jell-O. If you don't stand up for your side of it, there's nothing I can do on my, so it was kind of like we found this thing right on the first day or two of our working relationship together, where the door became open to, absolutely, you can make me funnier.
Right.
And by the way, I learned so much more about what's funny and how to make comedy from watching That Gang. And and I said, but can I be unashamed to tell you when you're sitting back and you shouldn't be sitting back? Can I treat you like an actor and ask you to step? And that understanding, I will actually say that understanding between he and I extended out. And one of the magical things about the Seinfeld show was, because no one was watching, it really, when you have a show that's not doing anything and you're on it, all you're thinking about is looking out for number one. Let me get a piece of tape off of this thing that I can go get another show with, because this is going to be out of here in a minute. The four of us never had that. The four of us had a sort of, what would be great? This line's good on me, but it would kill on Julia. Right. And vice versa. We very often in a television show, if you're not in the scene, you go to your dressing room while that scene rehearses. Right. We never did that.
Oh, interesting.
We stayed, we watched each other, we laughed with and for each other. We offered suggestions.
Right.
We were pulling for each other because we were having a good time doing it.
So great.
And I think, Jerry certainly set the tone for that by that conversation we had.
Yeah.
But here's the truth. It's kind of a weird truth. Mm-hmm. The only one of the core four I really got to know over the 9 years was Julia. Michael's, and Michael and I have talked about this recently. I read Michael's book, and I loved his book. And I got in touch with him, and I said, I love the book. Here's what's sad. I don't think I met this guy.
Right.
You were doing stuff I was not even aware of.
Right.
Because his process was so isolated in some ways. And I didn't want to interfere with that process. And I was in my own world. I was dealing with my own stuff.
Yeah.
With Jerry, every time he was with us, he was not someplace else he needed to be.
Right.
So he came down and we had fun and we enjoyed each other and it was a lot of laughs and I know some things about what was going on in his life. But I wasn't a confidant. And, he's down, he's rehearsing with us and then he's in the editing room or he's in the casting office or he's writing or he's doing something else. So I didn't hang out with Jerry.
Right.
And as a result, I don't really know him all that well. So when people go, tell me a great story, I go, well, he's really funny. He loves the laugh. We all had such a good time.
Yeah.
But when people say, are the four of you really close? I go, well, not in that way. We don't hang out. We don't have a social friendship. We had a work friendship. Now, given that, if any one of them said, hey, could you or would you or I need you or in a second. And when we are together, it's huge fun. I mean, it's like we're right back in that groove.
Yeah.
But if somebody said, hey, let's go have dinner, I go, okay, let's see if we can do this.
Right.